So good morning, everybody. I want to thank you all for taking the time out to attend part 2 of Lynn King's presentation on creating a caring environment in a digital world of learning. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you our speaker, Dr. Lynn King. Dr. King has taught in nursing education for over 30 years, with the past 9 years teaching in the online environment. She currently teaches in our RN to BSN and graduate programs. Dr. King recently left a position as the Director of Nursing, where the curriculum was based on an integral, caring, holistic framework and was endorsed by the American Holistic Nursing Association. Her research endeavors include pressure ulcer incidence and prevalence, and has investigated nursing faculty to faculty incivility. Dr. King is currently enrolled in the Caritas Coaching Education Program provided by the Watson Caring Science Institute. Lynn?
Thank you, Jamie. I'd like to start, before I get into the actual agenda, with a little brief centering meditation and invite you to do that. And as we talked about in session 1, that centering and the purpose of it is to really to empty out so that we can be present in the moment for what we have at hand, which is this presentation. So I will invite you to find a comfortable position, and it's typically sitting with eyes closed and or lids relaxed if you prefer, with a downward gaze. The back is straight and resting on the back of the chair. Hands are on your lap with palms either facing upwards to receive or downwards to feel grounded to the earth, whichever feels most needed and comfortable for you at this moment. This is a centering meditation focusing on Caritas communication and listening with your heart. Focusing on listening to the sounds within you and around you and your breathing. Let us enjoy this brief time together. We know as caring educators, advisors, or administrators that we must listen with our hearts. We do this by suspending role and status and honoring each unique person. When we learn to listen with a compassionate heart and without judgment, we become more conscious and open-hearted. So as you sit comfortably and breathe in slowly and exhale slowly, repeat the following. May I listen to my heart. May I respond to the world from a place of loving kindness. May I know that I am safe and protected. And may I know authentic caring within this community. We'll continue breathing slowly and we'll repeat this another time. May I listen to my heart. May I respond to the world from a place of loving kindness. May I know that I am safe and protected. And may I know authentic caring within this community. Take one more deep breath, and we will come back into this space. Thank you. Jamie, if you'd put the next slide up, please. So today's learning outcomes, we're going to be focusing, we'll continue from last time a little bit on the our own personal self-care journey, and think a little bit more about the caring philosophy and how our personal caring philosophy aligns with that teaching learning role. We'll really be focusing today on learning objectives 3 and 4, and that's looking at the multiple ways of knowing in teaching and learning. and development of transpersonal caring relationships using communication, Caritas communication. And then finally, we're going to end with an exercise looking at, we'll first discuss a little bit, digital classroom experience. So how do we create in that online learning environment a caring infusion, let's put it that way, of caring science, and that requires in everything basically we do. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and I have a couple of exercises for you to do. Try to respond to the evaluation comments, and Jamie and I talked about it, so we added more interacting engagement today. So hopefully with time, I will be kind of brushing upon some things, but I did put on the reference list, particularly with the ways of knowing. I think there's 3 articles that are very helpful for that and other resources. So I'll try to point those out along the way. Okay, next slide. So last session, at the end of the last session, I had asked you, the group, if everyone would commit to incorporating at least one self-care practice or micro practice into our daily lives. And everyone 100% agreed. So the question is, for the poll, have you noted a difference in how you feel since incorporating that self-care practice into your daily life? And there's the poll. If you would please.
So here are the results.
Okay, so some definitely yes, and some maybe. And one thing to note, and I think I forgot to tell you this last time, but for any micro practice or any real to end up benefiting from most self-care activities or micro practices, it requires 21 days, and that's for our neuroplasticity, for our brain to change. So again, perhaps those that are maybe aren't quite at that 21-day consecutive days, to note that. The other thing I want to comment about is really kind of tune into ourselves, because remember, in order to have the caring for self, we need to really be attuned to that. So kind of think about that as we go through today. We're going to be breaking out now, again, from last time's evaluation. People wanted to share a little bit more. So we're going to have a brief sharing in small groups to really kind of look at these questions. We talked about it last time, and there were reasons we were able, and what really helps to support my ability to care for self. But then there are barriers that exist. And so we'll try to identify those today. And then if people are able, for those that have noticed a difference or even a subtle difference, if they could describe in their group the self-care practice, maybe identify what they did commit to last time and how that has impacted on your life and yourself. So we will, Jamie, if you would put everyone in their groups, and we'll have 10 minutes for this, and then we'll return back to the big group and just have, if people would like to share 1 or 2 pearls from the discussion, that would be helpful.
So since we have 14 participants, we'll do like 3 to 4. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be great. Do you want to put that last slide back on, and then people could just kind of jot down, you know, what the task, you're going to just describe what supported your care, what were the barriers, and then what micro practice did you commit to and how that might have impacted you in your life.
Oh, also never mind. Okay, so I'm opening the rooms now.
Hi.
Hello. Hello.
Good morning.
So who wants to start?
I don't have a lot to say because didn't get to see the first one, so I'm just gonna listen and observe right now.
Okay, sounds good. Um, I personally have, since the pandemic started, for at least for us, like last March, with changing everything we're doing, I started using the Headspace app and meditating every day. And I take time out to exercise at 5 or 6 o'clock, and I limit my work hours and just stay as focused as I possibly can. So some barriers are heavier weeks than others, but I try to stick with that. And that's been working. I feel good.
I also included doing some morning stretches. I do this like 5-minute morning stretches. I've been talking about doing it forever, but now I like first thing in the morning, do my stretches. And I also, because I've been home, I've started doing these little afternoon 25-minute naps. And I don't really nap, I just rest. I just set a timer just before I start supper because I've been really tired, busy. So I take a 25-minute like rest, and and then I really feel good after that. So that's what I've been doing.
I haven't been too good. The thing that I'm trying to do is no work on Sundays and trying to stop and not work in the evenings.
Yeah. The day never ends, right? There's so much to do. You kind of, unless you put limitations on it, we'll just work 7 days a week.
Oh yeah,
I will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I kind of like outline what I want to get accomplished every day. And that's it for the day now. And once I accomplish it, I'm like, that's it. I know I want to do more, but like, no, that's my limit, because I space things out. Things will get done. They will get done. But yeah, I limit myself now too. Yeah.
Gosh,
think
my list would be too long.
But do you think that if you did just a full 8 or 9 hour day, that and you didn't overdo it during the week, that on the weekends it wouldn't be so difficult mentally to then catch up on those things you couldn't do? Is that possible?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Well, because I teach and overload a lot, and
Oh, yeah.
and so I'm working all those days.
Okay. So overload is another story, right? Or
Yeah.
another job, right?
Yep.
When the semester starts on campus, Saturdays are I will not open my laptop. I made it a rule, just a rule. And I told my students I will not answer emails on Saturdays. I will on Sunday, but Saturday I just put my laptop away, I put it away, and I won't even look at it because I just need a day to do whatever.
That's what my Sundays are going to be this semester. I put it on my little office hours.
I check emails on Sundays just because in case someone has an issue over the weekend. And so Sundays I will wake up and look and, and then I'll do a few little things. But yeah, I have to have that one day.
I probably need to be more intentional.
It does. It's almost like rejuvenates you. It's just kind of like, it just puts you back, I don't know, in order or whatever, however you want to describe it, but it does for me,
Desi, what have you done when you were teaching for us, or even now that you're retired? Anything?
I don't have any boundaries now. That's part of my problem, but yeah, I wasn't real good about setting boundaries back then either. That was always my husband's complaint. He's like, you don't get paid to work this much. I'm like, I know, but it's here. And since you never leave the house, it's always here. So that was my one drawback to online work. And I hear that a lot from a lot of people that work online. It's hard to leave it because it's sitting there.
Yeah.
So it sounds like boundary setting and sticking to it is a big key.
And I think if we let our students know that we're taking time out to rest our brains and be good to ourselves, I don't think they'll look at that as we're not willing to help them, but that's a good practice. And I think if we communicate that in our announcements and that should, and which I guess we'll talk about that later, but I think that's positive, you know?
Mhm.
If they were in a brick and mortar, they would not get Saturdays and Sundays from us.
That's true.
Although Cecilia,
And
you
I always,
Sundays. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I do Sundays because I get them, you know, like you guys all know, you get bombarded with emails. The emails is like a full-time job to begin with. I had 90 students this semester.
Yeah.
So for the on-campus, you know, lecture, you know, aspect. And so the emails were crazy. They were unbelievable. And I just had to tell them, you know, Saturdays, I will not look at emails. And so actually one student, actually, when I told him Saturday's my day off, she also said she took Saturdays off too. So I was kind of, you know, glad to hear that. She said, you know, she went and did something fun. Like, because I told them you have to do something fun, you know, a fun day, do something, go to the movies, go for a walk, do something. You need that break. So
Yeah.
one student, you know, expressed that they did that. So that was good to hear.
I'm gonna head out
I
of the
did
room.
better at boundary
I gotta
setting.
go.
Okay.
All right, I gotta talk to Lynn. Shoot. Hi, Desi.
Oh, I cut everybody else off too fast.
You know,
Everybody didn't listen as fast as I did, apparently.
when I close the rooms, it then gives another minute, which I didn't realize at the time. So
Okay.
that's why I realize that now. So
Oh, hello, everybody. Is everybody back, Jamie? Would they be back in the big room?
I believe so. There's 16 participants, so I think we were around that point when we started.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we did have, just an FYI, we had somebody jump in the middle of the session. So did you know that? Okay. I just wanted to know.
I get
if
an
that was
alert
correct.
when somebody's out.
Yeah, I ran into the notification late.
Yeah.
Would any group or any individual like to share anything that was kind of powerful from your group session? Before we move on?
Basically, one of the things that we all sort of concluded at the end was we recognize things that are good for us, but fighting the inertia to get out and do them is the hard part. There's always excuses not to do it.
Mhm. So kind of go back to that Caritas number one, the self-care. So the Caritas number one is really supporting care for self. So what I do is really a lot of reflection and because it's cold, I live in Maine and it's cold some days. And I think I don't want to walk today, but I kind of turn that around and say, okay, so if I walk, what is that supporting for me? And for me, I do kind of a meditative time and gratitude when I walk. I live in the woods and out in nature, so it's gorgeous and beautiful. So I kind of shift that. Do you hear that thinking? Instead of the excuse that it's too cold and I don't want to go, I kind of shift that to, so if I go, what will that do for me? And not just to, remember I talked last time, it shouldn't be just a check off on a list. So we shouldn't be making a check off. It should really imprint in us something. So in our interior, that it really is a powerful experience for us, and knowing that I need to do this because it's good for me. Does that make sense? Kind of thing.
There's almost a selfishness to that I think a lot of nurses struggle with. I mean, the thing that gets me outside is because I know my dog has to go out and she reminds me. So there's sort of an other motivation. And I think as nurses, we're very other motivated. That's a tough one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that selfishness comment, and I've heard that, and actually there's I've seen it like a poster that says self-care does not equal selfish care, right?
Logically, it doesn't.
Right, but I think you're right. I think society perhaps has, and externally, maybe perhaps we've gotten that message that if I go out and take care of myself instead of caring for someone else, then it's a selfish motivation, but that's not true. I mean, absolutely, because again, if we don't care well for self, we don't have that energy and capacity to actually become in a transpersonal relationship and care for someone else at that level.
Just a little humorous note, Lynn, you're talking about when you go out, and, it might be the weather or something. When I take my dogs out on my street are two huge dogs that attack me. And I've actually found it a challenge. I take my pepper spray and now I wait for them to attack me so that I can spray the life out of them.
Oh, that's horrible.
You know something? It's just pepper spray, but it's like, you know what? It bothers me so much that I can't walk on the street without dogs attacking me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
They're huge. They're
Have you
huge.
considered talking to the owner?
Yes. And they've attacked me 4 times. One time I actually hit the ground and smashed my head back.
Mm.
So it
Yeah.
gets very difficult. It gets
Mhm.
very difficult.
You know, Catherine, I had a similar experience. My dog got attacked and almost killed. And when I got back here to my house, I was like, talk about a panic attack. I was a mess, but I called the vet first, and then I called the police and the animal control. And that was comforting for me. And I did have the pepper spray, which I didn't have with me that day, but now it's with me every day. So I thought, you know, how can I empower myself? So I did alert them. They did go to the owner. You know, I have never seen the dog again, but yeah, I do understand that kind of, and it's terrifying when you have a dog that can harm you. But you know, I wouldn't put that in an excuse kind of thing. I'd just say that was a traumatic experience that you've had, and so that, and I understand that very well. That sometimes it's difficult to move past that, yeah, without feeling that empowerment and self-care. Okay, anything else before we move on? Anyone would like to share? Okay, so let's go on to the multiple ways of knowing. So multiple ways of knowing, and again, I'm going to go over this kind of quickly because of the time, and there are great articles on the reference list with this. And I think most people have heard of the 4 original by Barbara Carper. And Carper wrote an article in 1978, and she says that understanding these various ways of knowing patterns is critical for teaching and learning nursing. Understanding patterns does not extend nursing knowledge, but rather asks us to reflect upon the question, how do we know what we know? So in caring science, the reason we look at ways of knowing beyond empirics, which is your science-based knowledge, which we know nurses need to have. We want to really look at the subjective ways of knowing, and because it helps us to connect feelings, emotions, and decisions to the empirical data. So when we have patients, for example, or students, we all know evidence-based, either in education or in practice, is just so critical and important for safety, for great teaching learning experiences. But do we then relate that ways of knowing to connect feelings and emotion? And an example I'll give you in the program that I was the director before leaving, it was holistic with a caring science background. So we had many of our assignments where we pulled in multiple ways of knowing. So something like aesthetics, which is there, and that we talk about is the art of nursing. And that goes beyond the tangible to the intangible. And so one of the ways we had our students, they were, they had to create a e-portfolio over the 2 years. It was an RN-BSN program. And they would end up putting in that aesthetic, an aesthetic piece was required. And it could be music, it could be poetry, it could be a small piece of literature, it could be a journal, something that they wrote, a narrative, but they had to end up putting in something that again connected meaning about caring science and holism to their e-portfolio. And when I think about the aesthetic piece in nursing, and I do think we use it a lot, I don't think we always name it as such. Personal knowledge is an accepting, authentic, respectful awareness of how to be with another person. So that's how we are. We envision the whole. We're truthful. We are totally engaged with that other person. Ethical knowing is the moral values and beliefs within oneself and others, obligation and duty to do what is right and virtuous. And it also makes us responsible for our own actions and choices that we make. And we should be thinking in an ethical manner, which treats everyone fairly with compassion. So those are the first 4 of Barbara Carper's. And then the list expands on to sociopolitical. and that was developed by White. And that's really looking at our culture and the politics of understanding society and the role of nurse or educator within that society. Unknowing is interesting one because this is really thinking about how to have knowledge in one's own life and be open to the unknowns. And that kind of relates nicely to Caritas process number 10, which is open to the mysteries. And here we're really thinking about having the ability to be open, receptive, not closed-minded, really thinking about, whoa, there might be other ways of knowing that we need to really be thinking about for this solution-based problem that we're trying to correct. And in unknowing, it requires that we're flexible, easygoing. We listen with intentionality. And it invites awareness and release of the biases and prejudices, preconceptions and stereotypes and assumptions that most people carry into their daily life in the workplace. Emancipatory knowing is raising awareness or consciousness of unfair and perhaps unethical situations. And this requires collective reflecting. So this is more of a group effort on the meaning of such things and deciding to transform the situation. So it might be a group, a faculty group, and changing policy or procedure based on thinking about maybe perhaps this has not been a fair process. Experiential knowledge, which we can all relate to, is really referring to the skills or abilities gained through repeated exposure and practice. And here we grow and reconfigure our philosophy and our views. And Benner is who we can relate really well in nursing to Benner's novice to expert model. And the last one is intuition. And this is really the unspoken knowledge. It's a feeling, a sensing based on experience. Just knowing of how, which is, it's not rationally explained. And the literature really supports that in nursing and in education. We can think about it as being totally the opposite of empirical knowledge. And again, it's unexplainable. I think most of us have had that kind of experience. And people have asked me, can you get intuition when you're reading in the digital world? And we'll talk about that a little more later. But the answer is yes, you can read a message and have this intuitive feeling like something is just not right. And we'll talk about that when we move into that later session. We now move into the Caritas communication. And it's through being present to and allowing constructive expression of all feelings that we create a foundation for trust and caring. And somebody had written a question about that, about the allowing for positive and negative feelings. So we'll talk about that during the Q&A time later. And I think it'll come up a little bit also throughout this morning and when we get into our small groups. But when we look at Caritas communication, it embodies a sense of equality, as opposed to a hierarchical relationship. So typically in my nursing education, the traditional sense was the teacher was above us. So we had our students in the class, the teacher was the expert, the knower, the transmitter of knowledge, and the students were below. So it set up that hierarchical situation. With Caritas communication, we're all on the same level. Okay, so in terms of communication, the words we use define and shape our relationship with self and others. So words and how words are spoken create positive or negative energy. And when we think about that, how we come into work or come into a situation or our craft email message, are we coming from a place of positivism? Are we creating a space where we need to express what we're feeling, but are we coming across as more negative? Is it an attacking? How does that happen? In Watson's work, she talks about our energy contributes to not only ourselves and can cause that kind of spiritual, emotional, physical damage, but it also impacts the environment. And since we're all connected by the energetic field, universal energetic field, if I come to work or express my feelings with negative emotion, then the receivers feel that negativism, because that's that lower vibration, positive is higher, and the environment is kind of stifled. So it doesn't allow for that kind of creative energy and expression that I just mentioned in our ways of knowing. So when we use words that are positive, they're gentle, they're caring, they're kind, the language evolves from the heart with conscious intentionality. So it's really thinking about not responding, I said not reacting, excuse me. So rather than reacting, we're going to respond. And we're going to do it in a thoughtful and methodical way. We also, when we think about in the role of nurse or educator or advisor, when we use Caritas communication, we are communicating with confidence in the ability of the other to reach their own solution or transform the situation. We don't fix it. And that, again, is kind of a shift, especially in my early nursing curriculum and background, that we were there to help and fix and care and cure. But in Caritas communication, we bring out the best in that person through this trusting and caring relationship, that they're able to create their own solution for a problem. And we're going to get into this when we do some problem solving with the scenarios that I had you read. Okay, next slide, please. So within the Caritas communication, there is a actual process that's recommended. And it begins with centering, and it doesn't mean that we're going to do what we did earlier here today. It doesn't mean you might share that and do that with your student. For example, if you're going to meet with them, you might just say, let's just pause and take a couple of deep breaths. And because I won't want us both to be present, or yourself. I know when I'm attending a meeting, actually before almost every meeting, I do a little centering exercise to empty out all the busyness that I've had today so far. So I want to empty out, and I want to be fully present and engaged with you right now. And in order to do that, I have to center and frame that I am here fully attentive to you right now. Otherwise, I'm thinking about at noon there's an inauguration, this afternoon I have this test to do, et cetera, and I can't really be open to give and receive all that I'm here to give and receive. So when we think about Caritas communication, and because this program is in the digital world, in order to have success, academic success in that teaching learning process, building trust is critical. So when we're thinking about communication, we need to be sure to communicate with students in a fashion that is quick, clear, and often. We want to make sure we listen completely to that student's message. So when I think about listening, when I read the text, because it is text-based unless I call them or they call me or it's on the Zoom, I'm listening with heart as I'm reading. So I'm actually reading their message, and I'm fully attentive because I've just centered before I read that email. And I want to be open to make sure I don't misinterpret the message. So I clearly can take the time to not respond really quickly, but really process. Again, I want to respond to that student, not react to whatever the message is. And I think it's a little challenging when we get a message that's abrupt, might feel like we're being attacked, etc. But that to me is the opportunity to really take and model for that student and kind of think about what are the expectations of that person. Reading the field, We want to make sure we're open to reading the field, which again, if it's a classroom, it's really easy because I'm there, I'm present, I can look at body language, etc. When I'm reading the field in the text-based, again, it's the language that I'm using and the student or faculty, if I'm writing to a faculty, is receiving. Really, I'm trying to be very careful how I craft every email message that is sent out. Authentically responding is the next step. And here it's really, again, versus reacting, thinking prior to how will I respond, thinking about what's my intended message and how will that message be received by the recipient. That's a big piece. And I actually think about that before I actually hit the send button. If I were receiving this message, how would I feel? How would this message make me feel? And sometimes we do have to send tough stuff, tough information, but we want to make sure it's really clear. When we're communicating with a person, we will always want to check for accuracy, make sure our perceptions are accurate, and then confirm or affirm. And I'll get into just a little bit more on each of those. Next slide, please. Just a couple of key points. They're all listed here. We want to be centered. We want to listen with heart. We want to tune into the message being expressed. Not try to fix the person. We don't want to project our own story. So if the person is to be seen and heard, it's not an opportunity for us to put our story in. So we want to make sure we listen with heart-centered, listen to their full story, and then we might respond if that seems appropriate. We're going to allow for both positive and negative messages. And don't take it personally. Don't add to the drama. And I think that's what happens often when people are in kind of a heated situation, that it elevates and often things are said perhaps that should not have been said. Again, try not to fix. You want to avoid fixing the situation. So if the student presents you with a problem that they're having, we're not here to fix it. We're here to listen and support them in developing their own solution for that problem. Biggest piece is to stay calm and centered. So again, dwelling in that heart center, avoid getting pulled out, being respectful to the person, but don't try to fix it and try not to get involved in the drama. Next slide, please. Reading the field for cues on spoken words, emotion. Again, I think this tends to be easier in a live face-to-face kind of situation. However, the more you really focus and center and get into the moment, I think it's easier to read the field. Also, like when we think about reading the field in text messages, I think about what energy is being evoked or what energy pattern am I feeling as I read this. And again, the more intuitive we are, the more we internally process information and get more inside our own body awareness, I think, and mind awareness, we are able to really read that field in the text-based world. Okay, that's all I want to say for that. If you want to go to the next slide, please. Okay, so responding is waiting until the person is complete, so we don't interrupt. There's no crosstalk over. Respond from our heart, what feels like we want to respond to that person. And it's really good to kind of reflect back, saying what we saw, what we heard, what we felt during that experience. Get in touch with your own feelings as distinct from the other. So again, this is where we avoid being pulled into the drama. We avoid telling our own story, and it's really about, you know, the focus is on the other person. If we're the faculty, the advisor, or the nurse, we're focusing on the other person. And then the last thing, we want to respond at the end with the essence of what was communicated verbally and non-verbally. And if they mismatch, that's an opportunity to just say, gee, you're saying you're doing really well, but your body language is telling me that I'm concerned. There might be something else going on. So again, tuning into the person fully. And the last thing here, we want to really check for accuracy on the message. If it's live, did I get this right? And if it's a text message, send back your message. And this is my interpretation. Am I on track? Is this what the meaning that you were intended to send to me? Allow the time for the speaker to respond and fine tune. So if I say, did I get this right? This is my perception. Then I pause. The speaker then can respond and say, no, you totally missed that. That is not my intended message. And then it can be fine tuned. So we're looking really for accuracy. And again, I think about the times I worked in the emergency room in healthcare and other situations. Often it's very harried. And we often don't feel like we have that time, but this is really, to me, the most critical step in the communication process is making sure my perceptions match the intended message. And then at the very end of our communication, before we break, we always want to ask, is there more or is there something I can do to support you in this situation? And then close with appreciation for the other. I really appreciate you taking the time and chatting with me about this situation today. And that just always feels really, really nice because it makes people feel, I think, cared about when they're acknowledged for their participation in that. So thinking back, I just talked about all these different things about reading the field, about paraphrasing, clarifying, confirming, affirming, crafting digital messages thoughtfully, being present in the moment, not fixing things, etc. Are you willing to incorporate at least one Caritas communication strategy into your teaching, learning, advising? Yes, great, thank you. I think it'll become clearer as we do move into the scenarios in our small group work. But before we do that, are there any questions over anything that we've talked about so far about teaching, learning, Caritas, communication, multiple ways of knowing? Okay, well, I guess we'll get into the small group work. You're going to go into another breakout session. And in this breakout session and on the handout that I created with the 5 scenarios, each group will be assigned to the scenario number that you are. So if you're in group 1, you will be doing group 1 scenario for solution seeking. For each of these scenarios, we're going to assume that COVID is not in the picture. Because as I said, my little small group, sometimes we take a situation that's happening externally that we kind of can't control and we change things because of that. But right now we're going to just pretend and assume that COVID is not in the picture. So it's a typical teaching learning situation. We'll have small groups. We're going to have 10 minutes for everybody. Hopefully you've already read through the scenarios, so you can quickly read through it again. They're very short. And then you're going to discuss. So in this first part, we're really focusing on Caritas processes number 5, being present to and supporting for the expression of positive and negative feelings, and then creatively using self and all ways of knowing as part of the caring process, engaging in artistry of caring healing practices. And in each of the scenarios, there are a number of questions. So if one person would please be the recorder, and if you can put it on a Word document, what we'd like is for you to put that into the chat box. And again, it doesn't have to be complete sentences. They can just be some thoughts that you brainstormed together as a group answering these questions. that make sense? Any questions about this task? It's pretty clear on here. Okay, great. So Jamie, would you put everybody in there?
Sure. And I guess one other thought, right, as they can share their Word document as it's being written. You can share your screen in your breakout room. So that might be helpful as each participant can see what's being written. So
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. I found that out that in your breakout room, you can pull up and I'm a very visual learner. So for me, that would be a really wonderful way to do that. So everybody can get into their groups and you can read your scenario and do some solution seeking.
okay. Lynn? Lynn, can you hear me? Oh.
So I'm honest, I didn't read it, but I do have it up. You want me to share
Yeah,
my?
I just grabbed it too, but yeah, you want to share yours, Celia?
Yeah, I'll share mine. Let me just share
And-
this real quick.
So we're,
And you know what, if you want to just write underneath it, it's a Word document. We can just look at it that way, do it that way.
Does everyone see that?
Yeah,
now we do, yeah. So you're
Okay.
gonna be the writer, the scribe, right? Since you're
Oh, yeah,
sharing.
that's fine. I've been chosen as the Madame foreperson in the grand jury just today, so why not?
Oh my goodness.
that's exciting.
Can you tell us what the case is about at all?
It's a secret. The
Uh,
judge has said it's a secret so many times. So my husband, I come home, I'm like, it's a secret.
Oh, there's Jamie.
Yeah.
She's in our group.
No,
Yeah.
I'm in the other group. I already started with my other group, so I don't know why I pressed this button. Sorry.
Well, I invited you to come because we don't have the scenario. We
Oh.
need scenario 4.
Oh, that's why you invited me. Okay, let me grab it. 1 second.
I have a Word document. Hold on. I went into what you posted, Jamie, in the forum.
Yes.
Let me see if this is going to work. I'm trying to, it's not opening for me. Hold on. Let's see. Wait a second, because we only have 10 minutes to finish this up.
Right. I have it right here.
Yeah, it's not opening. I'm
I know.
trying, but
That's okay. Turning. 1 second. Here we go. Okay. I'll share my screen. I'll just stay in this group at this point. Not a problem. Okay. And what group are we? I forgot now.
4.
We're 4.
We're number
Okay.
4.
Okay.
Oh, mine just opened now.
Okay. All right. We're good. Okay. So I'll be
Are
described.
we scenario number 4? Is that
Yeah.
it?
Yep. We're scenario number 4. So, okay. So if we read through this and then we'll write our comments.
Do you need to go back to your other group, Jamie?
No.
I feel bad that we pulled you away.
Now, if do you have yours open?
Yeah, we're okay.
Okay.
You can go back. I'm good.
Okay. So go ahead and share then. Okay. I'll go back.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think the student, whoever plays the student is playing a student, not a faculty playing a student. Does that make sense?
Okay. All right.
Sorry, I'm late. They had a problem in another room, so I fixed that and now I'm back. So,
So I think the question is, who wants to be the student?
I can be the student.
Jamie's going to be the student.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we're all just like, let's just get this graduation,
Right. But
this program worked out. What we usually do is, let's just take a look at the programs in the past and follow what we've been doing, because, it's always worked out. It's always been nice. And we just don't have time for anything big and different. What do you guys think? Is that a good idea?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we'll have, Cecilia, you can do the flowers, and Terry, you can do the brochure, and we'll ask the secretary, we'll do what we usually do.
Forgive me, I have a cable guy here talking really loud, so forgive me.
Are you writing Are you writing something on that document?
I can do that. Hold on.
Yeah, because we'll need to kind of paste that into the chat.
Somehow I kind of logged myself out of that. I don't know where it went. Hold on a second. I was just so distracted.
I know.
Oh, my.
People.
It's, all right, hold on a second. I don't know where it went. Hold on a second.
While you're doing that, Celia, so Laura, you're asking Jamie, you're telling Jamie that
I'm
basically
telling the group what we're doing, right?
we don't have a lot of time.
Bossy.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Does would anybody rather do it a different way? I mean, we don't have a lot of time. But
All right, so here it is. Gotta share it. Let me share it. Where'd it go?
graduation is in 2 weeks.
Right.
So I would ask the student what their thoughts are on, what is your thought on how we could, change this and make it less traditional? Is that something, get their view on it?
Right. So like, for example, when I look at that third bullet point, identify at least 3 subjective ways of knowing, like for the student perspective, like, we are we know what's important to us. Like maybe we don't want Nightingale, right? The traditional holding the candle, right? We're probably a whole generation younger than most of the faculty. And so, we probably, maybe we want music, or something that excites us because it's a big day. So I don't have the subjective ways of knowing offhand, but I think of like art, right? The aesthetics, right? I think of, remember any of the others, like,
What was it? Things like the music. What was the last thing?
poetry,
Oh,
things like that.
okay. Something more modern, you want to say?
Yeah, modern.
Regards? Okay. So,
Well, Jamie, I'm talking to you as you're the student.
Right.
Do you understand the symbolism of the flame, of one flame lighting other flames and so on down the road? I hear you saying that you'd like to have more modern elements within it. But is it possible to retain some of the things that we've always done and that have really strong meaning for the profession of nursing?
I guess I can see the connection between Nightingale being the first nursing theorist and beginning of nursing profession. But we really do want to have something different than the way it's always been. Something that we learned in our education, right? Don't have to always do it the same way every year, year after year, but we can incorporate maybe some traditional things like the candle.
So Jamie, can you tell me a little bit more about, you mentioned some use of art and music. Can you tell me a little bit more, tell us a little more specifics of what you would like to see in the graduation?
So what about if the students created an image that reflected their feelings about entering the profession? Is it, it can just be, it can be a picture, but it can also be a drawing that the students can hold up as they get pinned, and they can show it to the audience.
so incorporate, I missed that, Jamie. Incorporate, you talked about experience or feelings. I missed that.
I guess, for example, students can create an image or
Oh.
choose a picture, right? That like that illustrates what being a nurse means to them, something like that. And maybe we can even have a brochure that shows all of these images together as part of our, our invite to.
Do you feel that all the your fellow students would be comfortable with that?
I'm not really sure. That's a good
Maybe-
question.
Maybe talking to them. I mean, we don't have a lot of time, right? But maybe you could get some feedback
Right.
on,
And okay,
on what they would like to do.
right. Okay, that's my timer to send the 1 minute warning. So I guess take over from here. Okay, bye.
Right.
All right, bye.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi. Hi.
we had a little challenge though. We weren't quite sure about identify at least 3 subjective ways of knowing used.
I think if we came up with 1 or 2,
Uh-huh.
be good. Yeah.
on here. Okay, so we're going to get back together and group 1, would your reporter like to report on George and Stacy?
Sure. I took notes. If anyone else in group 1 wants to jump in, please, please do. So the first conclusion we came to is that we never want to be the dean in this situation, or any situation really. But to summarize, George sent Stacy a borderline bullying email. And so some of the questions that we wanted to address, we just wanted to make sure that Stacy felt very supported in terms of, not just that she was not alone in this. So as a dean, we wanted to listen to Stacy's concern to try to determine how she feels. She's new, she may be fearful. We thought that we may be able to sort of get a meeting or suggest that Stacy approach George, but in doing so, we would kind of offer some phrases, some opening strategies to Stacy to approach it in a curious and inquisitive way and invite George into the conversation. We thought that the issue really originated with George, but if we feared that if the dean talked directly to George, it could worsen trust issues between all 3 of them. And so I don't know, those were some of the highlights, but other group members, please jump in if you have other ideas, suggestions, anything I missed.
I'm curious about the question, would you involve other members of the team in your follow-up? So is there anyone else, as the dean, was there anyone else that you wanted to involve in this at all?
Yeah, so we did talk about that. Initially, we said no, there were not other people that we would want to involve. We were really hopeful that it could be solved at the level of Stacy and George. That the adding more people might create more chaos.
Mhm. Great, thank you.
To add on in that group, we were trying to elicit all the caring demeanors when two faculty member didn't agree on something and the new faculty went directly to the dean. We were trying to encourage the dean to give supportive guidelines. Let Stacy try to handle this. Let the new faculty member try to handle it. If able to, then maybe ask for a meeting with the dean again, being almost like an intermediate, supplying the curative manner. But the encouragement initially was on the staff, asking the two faculty members to really try to work it out in that caring way.
That truly is the best approach, but and I love what you said about giving Stacy support. So as the dean, if you could support Stacy in learning this Caritas communication, then she would come to George heart-centered, right? And say, I'm concerned about this email because this is how I perceived it. And this was the message. And is that what you've intended? I want to clarify, you know what I mean? I think that if the dean could really support Stacy in that communication pattern that we went over, centering before this, then it's going to build her strength as well, as a faculty member, to be able to solution based instead of moving it off to the dean, because the dean isn't really involved in this. When you think about two people interacting, the dean isn't really involved. It's between whatever's going on, and we don't know what's going on, what's behind George, sending this message, right? So Stacy can find that out if she has the skill set to approach George in a caring manner.
I think you're right. I think that's what we saw in between the lines with Stacy, is that she is new. She might have some reservations about talking to faculty who have been there, and then she's getting a borderline bullying email and doesn't know what to do with it. So the dean realizing where she might be would be really important, and offering her, just to reuse your word, guidance on how to approach the situation, but then following up on it, seeing how it went. And then if she has to further get involved, that would be it. But trying to resolve it between the two of them with curiosity and just inviting George to, say, oh, yeah, you're right. You are new. Maybe we can talk more about the rubric and, what questions do you have, or something like that. If you could get George to that place, if Stacy had the skills to get George to that place, that could be really helpful. So.
Right, exactly. We're going to move on for time's sake to scenario number 2, and it's planning a nursing program event. So if the spokesperson for that group would like to share how they help support this.
Okay, that was our group too. It's basically, it was the conversation for, let me see, scenario 2 is planning a nursing program graduation event. And the one student is not wanting that less traditional event. They want, like in the past where they've had, it says, she states, last year's event seemed like it was from an era of Nightingale. And she was mostly, trying to focus on that. This is 2021. So pretty much the conversation was, to ask the student thoughts are with making it less traditional, getting their input, getting their idea, and what they like to see in the graduation, as opposed to the traditional Nightingale theme. And the student more wanted to focus on, what is more modern, incorporate more music, poetry, things like that. We pretty much wanted, listen to the student and then ask, I hear what you want, reiterate what the student's desire is, get it, to repeat what basically what the student wants. But at the same token, we also want them to go back to their peers and see what their peers think about the idea. Maybe their peers may have other ideas to make it more fit to their their group, their generation. And an idea was, that the student brought forth was more like incorporate things like create images or pictures that illustrate what being a nurse is to them, to make it more personal in the graduation. Someone asked, do you feel all your fellow students would be comfortable with that? And that's where we want them to go back and pretty much bring this idea to the group and to their peers and see what they have to say. And I think basically the most important thing is to acknowledge what the student wants, the response, and to find out what the other student's response is as well to the idea and to the, change for the program. Is there anything else I missed, group? Group 2? That kind of sums it. Did I kind of sum it? Okay.
I think that was a good summary. And I think we use the tools in order to create that caring environment. We used the art of questioning and active listening. And then we also used a debriefing model. So with the gather, we gathered what she thought, we analyzed it further, and then we didn't get the summary because it was too short. But we used some of the key principles to help create that caring environment.
Yeah, we actually sort of acted it out. I may have misinterpreted the assignment.
No, that's exactly. Yeah, whatever. Each scenario is different, but if you needed somebody to play the student role or dean role or whatever, yeah, that was kind of.
And one of the things that I added was also to have the student consider the meaning of the lamp. Rather than just toss it out necessarily is, do you understand that transmission and bringing light into, our care, that kind of thing. So yeah, to listen to where they want to go, but also have them, listen to why things are done the way they were done.
You beautifully, I will say, brought out the aesthetic way of knowing. Both of you have talked about that, the lamp and the art of nursing, that aesthetic way of nursing, and you supported the student when the student wanted to bring in more music and art and different things. So sort of both of you and the student were both using that way of knowing, and that was really nice to see. Thank you. Marguerite, is scenario 3 to report?
Yeah, scenario 3 is, I would be surprised if faculty in this meeting haven't encountered scenario 3. And it's basically a student being chronically late with most assignments, has never emailed the professor or to offer any reasons for being late. You've reached out to the student and the student is in jeopardy of failing the course due to chronic late penalties assigned to grades. And of course, the first question is, does the student situation remind you of any you've had? And boy, does it, a lot. And so the different steps that you can take, and one of the things that I have started doing, which I shared with Lynn, is sending an introductory email out to all of my students when I open the course. If I have to, if I want to highlight something, but I also talk about how flexible I am with deadlines, but please let me know if you need more time or need more help or whatever. So that's the first thing. So the students know, none of us are mind readers. So if the student doesn't, after I reach out to the student multiple times via email, I also get the academic advisor involved, because they may have much more of a relationship with students. And I can't say enough about our academic advisors and how helpful they are in knowing, in giving advice, and because they have the relationship with the student, especially if it's a student you've never had before. We have to issue a flag, and Lynn and I talked about how sometimes the flag will really prompt the student to reach out to you. But one thing that I think that's key here is the student situation is unknown. And I think for those of us who have been teaching for a while, we know that we never know what a student is going through. And so there has to be a lot of compassion towards that student because we don't know what they're going through. And I've had students apologize for not reaching out and then tell me what they had going on. Because as you know, as human beings, if we have so much going on, I know this is pre-COVID, but we certainly know this post-COVID. If a student has so much going on, they can't organize their thoughts, they can't prioritize, they are so overwhelmed, and their thought processes and decision-making processes are certainly impacted. So by having experiential knowledge or personal knowledge of the situation, these are also types of knowing: personal knowing, experiential knowing, and I think ethical knowing comes in here as well, because we also have to be supportive, but we also have to weigh what we do for other students versus what we do for this student as well. And through all of that, be supportive of the student in the entire process. So Lynn, please jump in.
You have a great job. Great job. That was very comprehensive. Thank you. Scenario 4, an angry student KR. And this is about a student. I'm just gonna, because we're running out of time a little bit. Student submitted a scholarly paper below a passing grade and they're not happy with it. And so they send an inflammatory email to the professor thinking their grade is not fair, and also questioning the qualifications of the faculty member. And who's reporting for scenario 4?
I will do it quickly, but I've got to go, and I'm sorry about that. The main thing we took away from this, we've all been there, we've all been in that experience with the student, really approaching the student in a very, acknowledging way where we're going to be respectful of the student. We talked about doing it by phone. We talked about doing face-to-face. I'm a believer, if you want to talk about grade, we're going to meet face-to-face. But also really focusing on the student, making sure that they know that they're being heard, that we acknowledge that they're upset. I'm just throwing my own stuff in there from my own experience. I tend to read those emails out loud to the student and just ask them to think about how it could be interpreted on the other side. But then really making sure that they walk away from the meeting feeling that they've been listened to, that we're committed to their success and giving them tools to move forward and so that they can be successful. So that is like a really tiny nutshell. I put the rest in chat and I was just about to hit the I gotta go button. So
Oh, thank you, Londa. That was great though. And you hit the essence of it. And I appreciate your supportiveness to the student.
thank you.
Thank you. The last scenario is 5, a struggling student, MJ. And who's reporting for that?
That was Becky and I. So I think, again, this is a scenario that every one of us who teach in the BSN program has had, with a student who is late with her work and she emails back and she's explained her life situations and how things are awful with kids and mom lives with me and all of these things. I don't know how I'm going to get this done, but I've got to get my degree by this deadline. What do I do? So the first thing, of course, is to show empathy, asking the student what would be helpful for them for time management and to get their work submitted. And thankfully we have the incomplete contract that we can use, if we get to that point. But first, just to acknowledge for her that, yes, we understand that it's difficult to manage time with all of those things, and to just be very, with that authentic presence, just acknowledging her stress and her situation, and then meeting with her either by phone or Zoom to talk about what we can do to work together to help her not have to drop out of school, not have to leave the program, but to be successful.
Wonderful. And I want to highlight the last thing you said, and that's how do you work together? So work as a team, listening authentically, being present and showing compassion. However, remember, you're not going to fix the situation. We're going to work together so that she can come up with solutions that are going to, and you'll support that. But that was wonderful. Thank you. That was really, really good. Thank you all. I'm looking at the time and being seeing that we're running out of time. We have about 5 minutes, 7 minutes left. So what I'm thinking about at this time, because I do want to get into the other information, and that is the, so I guess I would ask you, would it be better to move into a Q&A and answer the questions from the last time and any questions that have evolved today, or to continue on with some information about how we're going to be crafting these emails and the digital and messages, and then pick up on that from the next session? Which feels better to you?
If you want to add it to the chat or just speak up.
I think just speak up.
I would prefer to have the new material pushed to the third presentation, because it's kind of towards the end, and I think to process it, we need time, and I have to jump off in a minute anyway to go to another meeting, but I kind of would prefer to process what was done today and then start afresh, but that's just me.
Thank you. That's where I was leaning, Cheryl, and I
Yeah, I agree.
include the group, but there's a lot, what we've already talked about is going to be applied, but there's even a little bit more information as we think about crafting those messages for these responses for the next time. So if that's okay with everybody, and if you do need to leave, I do understand. I wanted to go back some questions that came up, and if you have more questions, please do put them in the chat box. Next time I had planned to start in the third session with Q&A to make sure, because I don't want to leave people dangling without Q&A. One of the questions from the last session was how to create more caring online environment in all we do. And again, I'm going to talk more about this next time, but I want to answer that question today. And that is, when we think about creating the online caring environment, it starts again with us. We become a caring person. We develop that relationship with ourselves, transpersonal caring with the other person. However, everything we do when we're thinking about teaching and learning, especially in either the classroom, traditional or online, has a caring focus. So that could be how we develop our syllabi. What's the language we use in our syllabi? What's the language we use in our modules? So when we're developing online teaching learning modules, how is that expressed to the student? Is there a caring essence that comes through? Assignments, are they thoughtfully created so that students feel that caring essence coming through that? Our policies, procedures, what we talked about in this last session, our announcements, our emails that we craft. So when we think about that caring essence, it's really threaded throughout the entire learning management system. It's how we interact with faculty one-to-one with each other or in small groups. So I hope that kind of answers that question. And as I said, I have more information that I want to share with you on the next time. The second question that came up was about a simulation situation. And it was really how to allow, I hope this is the essence of it, I'm not sure if I sent that along, how to allow for expression of positive and negative feelings while keeping the environment safe for all. So this could be either clinical, a lab, or simulation experience. So it would be, or a live classroom. Kind of think about, and this was my experience, and I did teach in the simulation lab. And what we did was we established Caritas etiquette for all. So that included all members, so students, faculty, our sim people, anyone who was in that space. We created Caritas etiquette, a whole list of behaviors that were expected in a caring fashion. Everyone was given the list for the etiquette, and everybody agreed to it. So we actually had a little discussion and that we were going to do that. So that kind of, the expectations were clear. Center before simulation begins, be authentically present. It was really critical. Students had to keep their cell phones away from them, for example, so that they weren't distracted from the situation. If a student attacks you, the faculty, or another student, remind them gently of the etiquette that you all crafted together and how that procedure and experience was going to be. And do it very heart-centered, and remind them also that, and it should be in the etiquette list, that all feedback, critical feedback, should be done with kindness and be heart-centered. So there really shouldn't be, and I did this for a number of years. We never had any of these altercations in that classroom because I would remind the student, and if it still continues, I would then say, George, I'd like to speak with you after class, please stay behind, so that I would meet with the person. If it just continued, even after reminding everyone in the classroom that we all bought into this Caritas etiquette. And that I never had to, I think I might have had to do that once, but it was very rare because everybody, the learning community, formed that trust and respect for each other so that it wasn't an issue. Another question that came up, it was about spooning feet. I mentioned that as a micro practice last time, and you can actually Google this. There's a YouTube video, but for people with insomnia, if you use a stainless steel spoon and you actually gently massage your feet before going to bed, the soles of your feet, it enhances sleep. So there's some, again, meridians, energy, nerve endings there that, and it works. So I did want to report back. It's worked beautifully for me. Those were the questions that I picked up in the chat last time. Are there any, Jamie, in the chat today?
Not that I have seen.
Any questions that you would like to have answered before we close? Or thoughts? Do you have anything you want to share? Okay, then the last thing I just wanted to ask, and I want to thank you again, all of you, for your great participation in this whole project that I'm doing. And I would like to know, part of my Caritas coaching program requirements, I need to write an abstract assignment as well as a poster. And what I'd like to make sure it would be okay with all of you if I included anonymously anything that was perhaps put into the chat as in the evaluative piece. So some of the dialogue that we just had, or responses for our scenarios, or any comments that kind of link to this. If you prefer not to, would you please email me? So if you would prefer that, even with anonymous, no identifiable data, you would not like me to use that, please email me. But otherwise, I'll take it as an okay to include that. Okay, then we will wrap up for the day. And again, thank you all for participating, and I'll look forward to seeing you for the third session, and we'll revise and revamp as time goes on. We've got to be flexible as a Caritas nurse. Enjoy the inauguration, everybody.
Thank you, Lynn. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.